Good afternoon, Kevin McNicholas and Gillespie here. Hope everybody is doing well. Gonna be talking this afternoon about family and community engagement. Thanks to Matt at the ROE for giving me the opportunity. So, family and community engagement for me can take on a bunch of different forms. I'm gonna start you out just a little bit about me. I'm the school social worker for the Gillespie School District, have been for the last 10 years, and a really tremendous blessing to me. I started out in reverse order here. I have them listed. I started out with Kendall County Special Ed Co-op in 2005. So this is my 20th year. Worked for Kendall County Special Ed for 2 years. We moved down to this area because my wife's from this area, and worked for East Alton for 6. Went to Region 3 Special Ed for 2. At the end of my time with Region 3, I finished out a retirement. I finished out a semester retirement in Alton, and then was hired to come over here, and has been a tremendous experience for me. We've made some fantastic friendships and some deep and long lasting partnerships with a lot of our community agencies, some of which I'm going to talk about as we go on in here. Far more importantly than that, I am Laura's husband and Ellie Jeremiah and Micah's dad. They are my foundation. Our family is number one to me. This picture here is at Bear Lake in Colorado. We took a national parks trip. For anybody watching, we have a national parks pass for fourth graders. It's called Every Kid Outdoors. Just Google Every Kid Outdoors, and it gives you free entry to the national parks. Anyway, each of our kids, when they're in fourth grade, get to pick their national parks. So Ellie, my oldest, picked Colorado, and Jeremiah, our middle son, picked California last year. Micah, our youngest son there in front, said when he gets to fourth grade, he wants to go to Hawaii. I said, Mom and Dad are going to need other full-time jobs. I think we're going to do the West Coast with him, Arizona, or excuse me, Washington and Oregon. Anyway, my wife Laura was a school psych in Edwardsville for 10 years prior to this, and she has been a fantastic support for me. As I said, our family is our foundation. Laura and I sat down and created this graphic here. That Coretta Scott King quote that you're reading there is tremendously meaningful to me because the greatness of the community most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. A community is more than just a group or a conglomeration of people. A community becomes meaningful to people. It becomes where you grew up. I've got several young social workers who I mentor, whether formally or informally. And I said to one of them earlier this year, we were talking, and I said to her, we're going to have probably 8 or 10,000 kids in the course of a career who we either work with directly or, worked with in a classroom or something like that. But they only have one us, right? They only have one social worker who they knew. And they remember, oh, that was Mr. McNicholas from elementary school, from middle school, from high school. I hope they remember us fondly. The community is the same way. You only have one community that you grow up in. You may move, but everybody I've ever talked to, I say, where are you from? Even the people who say all over, I'll say, where do you call home? And they'll tell me, oh, I'm from blank, wherever their hometown was that they felt the most connected to. And a lot of times I'll ask people, you're from everywhere. You grew up lots of different places. Why do you pick that one? And people will say, well, it's, people were all together, or they cared, or, people give me some reference to the importance of that community. And the more compassionate the members of that community, the better outcome we're going to have with those community members, especially the youngest community members who we're entrusted with in schools. So my question, what do our students need? Every child needs a foundation. A lot of our students, unfortunately, and I call this American reality, I'm going to reference this several times as we go along. Many of our students don't have a strong family foundation at home. A lot of our kids don't have parents who they feel like are there for them. They don't have parents who are strong in their own parenting skills, confident in their own parenting skills. And a lot of that comes from unresolved trauma. I know that's not our topic today, but I don't think we can accurately discuss what's going on in our communities in terms of engaging as a school district, engaging as individuals even, without talking about trauma, without recognizing that a lot of the confusion that takes place and a lot of the basic needs that don't get met come from trauma, come from people who are living with a lot of unmet needs themselves. And our students happen to be the next generation who is dealing with that. For a lot of our students, we are the most consistent and supportive people in their lives. I joke that we might be the only normal people they ever meet. And my gosh, if we're normal, right? But our way of life and our belief system and all of that may be very countercultural to a lot of our students and families. They may be hearing a lot different from their parents, from their paradigm. A lot of our students don't grow up with their parents. A lot will grow up with maybe grandparents. I met a great grandparent the other day who was raising a great grandchild. I mean, the family constellations, family dynamics look a lot different, but families who feel plugged into a community are oftentimes the most successful families, regardless of what their dynamic looks like, what their constellation looks like. So, what is family and community engagement? To me, the best definitions I came up with, and I'll run through this. Family engagement is working with families on more of a micro or individual level. It's student and family specific, meeting each family where they are to help support them with their respective needs. So kind of going back to the last slide where I was talking about there may be different looks of families, different family dynamics and constellations, but on that micro level, it's more individual. And a lot of our families who come in are looking for us to help them as a school district meet those unmet needs, whether with their children or looking for more support. Community engagement is bridging the whole community, bringing it together for the benefit of all of our students and families on a more macro level, on a bigger, more broad level. It's building consistent support systems that are available for everyone through community partnerships. One of the most valuable partnerships I have right now for me here in Gillespie is the Maple Street Clinic, which is the Macoupin County Department of Public Health. They've been tremendous, and they have really been a partnership I value. My children go to the dentist there, and they will send a mobile dental van to our school for students who are parents are unable to bring them to appointments and things. They can get teeth cleanings, checkups, get their teeth taken care of here. They do shot clinics at the beginning of school. They employ, it's called the School Linked Health Center. So they employ a counselor who's in my buildings to help support me 2 days a week. So the community engagement, that's just one of many partnerships that we have. But my partnership with our local health department is a tremendously, tremendously valuable one. And I know I'm forgetting some of the services, but those are some that are extremely valuable to me. The handshaking graphic on here, to me, looking at school being necessary for ongoing community engagement, those go hand in hand to me. And it has to be a partnership, schools and the community, because they're not mutually exclusive. We have to work with our community. I have the privilege every summer of working with the Regional Office of Education and Mindful Practices in Chicago. We put on a summer conference in Collinsville every year. And my presentation is similar in a lot of respects to this. And this past summer, when I presented, I talked about how churches and community organizations are helpful, but don't have the outreach that they once did. I've seen that here in Gillespie. We have some tremendous churches here in Gillespie that do community meals. I run our Fellowship of Christian Athletes program. So one of our pastors comes over and joins me frequently. So we do have a lot of partnerships with our churches here. I moved to Jerseyville almost 19 years ago. And in that 19 years, I have seen in our own church and in the churches in town a dwindling in attendance, a dwindling in events, and a lot of the folks who were taking care of a lot of community needs through churches are unable to do that because 19 years ago when I moved down here, those were folks in their 60s who are now in their 80s, who now are not able to physically take on and do a lot of the projects that people were doing at one time. Likewise, the community organizations. When I moved to Jerseyville, we had the Elks, the Knights of Columbus, the Eagles. We had the Moose. I'm trying to think. There were 3 or 4 others. I think there was an Odd Fellows organization. I'm trying to think of what else. We have the VA. And of those, The only two I can think of off the top of my head that are still active are the VA, or excuse me, not the VA, the Legion. We have the Legion, we have the Knights of Columbus still, but all of those others have closed and aren't doing. We had Kiwanis, we had the Lions, we have none of that anymore, other than the Legion and the Knights of Columbus. And community organizations in a lot of small towns. I know we have more potentially in cities because of a larger population, but in a lot of our small towns, and Gillespie is just like this. We don't have the outreach from the churches and community organizations, so they're not able to support our students. It's coming to our doorstep, friends. It's coming to exactly what that bottom point says. There's a great increase in what schools are now providing for our students in order to care for their physical and social emotional needs. And so often, what I get from people is, well, the parents should be doing this, or someone else should be doing this. Sure. Yep. There's a lot of things that people should be doing. However, we as a school district are people know that we're going to be consistent. And it's amazing to me. And I do a book club, book study with our teachers every Wednesday. We've done the first book was called I Wish My Teacher Knew, which is fantastic. And the one we just did today is Positive Mindset Habits for Teachers. And several of my teachers referenced, we're trying to meet math and reading minutes. We're trying to do all of this. We're trying to get our lessons in, but look at everything else we're doing. So this slide is very valuable to me because it tells me what are we actually providing in school. And in red, they're meeting basic needs before we teach anything at all. Students are unable to access their education if their needs are not met. So those basic needs of, look at this, our kids get fed twice a day. They're receiving their counseling and social emotional support. Getting their teeth cleaned, I had referenced that through Maple Street a couple times a year at the mobile dentist lab. They receive their medications from our school nurse. They're able to go on field trips and receive other enrichment opportunities. They get to the nurse to take care of their basic health needs and things like that. So much of this, and I understand that it's been pushing this way. If I do this presentation or one like it 10 years from now, I would wager that we would be saying our kids get fed 3 times a day and food sent home on weekends. Kids are in some districts. I would not be surprised if we were looking at nurse practitioners rather than nurses, because I think that our schools are becoming looked at as not just a member of the community, but in a lot of respects, where we don't have a health department in town. If I look out the front door of the high school, I can almost see the health department here in Gillespie. We're right next to each other. But in so many of our smaller communities, because of distance, because of transportation, people aren't able to access that. So they're looking to our schools to be able to meet those needs, which is a responsibility for us, yes, but also a privilege because as big of a part, I mean, think of your favorite teacher right now. Everybody had one, even if you didn't have a great experience in school. School wasn't my favorite, but I could still tell you that Mrs. Mushrush, my pre-K teacher, was my very favorite. She had the most fun. She was so fun. She was always singing. She had a great attitude. We did a million art projects. We made ornaments that still hang on our Christmas tree. My wife won't let me throw them away, but they're fun memories from preschool. And I went to preschool in 1984. So I still remember. So I can tell you about my favorite teacher. I know all of you can think of that too. Our schools are not only going to be people remembering that was my favorite teacher. This is going to be kids who are our next generation of adults who are saying, they took care of me. That was where my needs were met. This was the foundation for me. In terms of thinking about community engagement, to me, community engagement, I'm looking at larger events that bring more people in. The first one there, Save Night. My first year at East Alton Middle School, my principal had tasked me with it's Save as Students Against Violence Everywhere, thus the acronym. And it was really a tremendous activity, and we planned it from the ground up. And it was to bring our students and our parents in because we were struggling with just that in East Alton. A friend and colleague of my wife was a Rams cheerleader at the time that the Rams were still here in St. Louis. So we were able to get her and a couple of her teammates to come over and give a presentation about dating violence. It was excellent. I had another teacher from Wood River, which is our neighboring community in East Alton, who had a presentation that he did about teen relationships and things like that. So we had some presentations. We had a climbing wall. We had prizes. Everybody walked out of there with a prize that night and some really cool stuff. I reached out to the Cardinals, to the Rams, the Blues. I got a ton of stuff. So we had a lot of community investment that night. It was tremendous. East Alton Middle School had 220 kids in those days. I think we had, I think 160 that night. It was really tremendous. Later, we planned a family reading night. Same thing. Kids came in, they got dinner, they got books. I mean, we had food at Save Night, we had food at family reading night. Um, our Meet the Teacher nights have been very valuable at all of my schools because the kids have a chance to bring their parents in and show off what they're doing, their work. Jill Rosentretter, my now high school, former middle school principal here in Gillespie, started up student-led conferences. So the teachers will be seated at tables, and our middle schoolers will come in and direct their parents to each of their teachers. And so the student introduces their parents to the teacher, and the teacher can talk about, what the student's doing, answer questions, things like that. So that's been a really valuable for us. Obviously, field trips are community engagement because it's bringing parents in and we're going out into the community, which is cool. Kind of on a smaller level, our sociology class at Gillespie High School has gotten some donations, and we have a locker, and it's locked, but multiple of our staff have access to it. So if a student needs a hygiene product, whether for school or home, so we've got spray deodorant that you can use at school if you need that, but we have sticks of deodorant if you don't have it at home. We have toothbrushes and toothpaste that you can bring home. We have shampoo and body wash and all of that, conditioner and things that it's no questions asked. Somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I need something." And we've got the locker, we've got the combination, give it to the student. They go and take care of their need. And it's discreet, but it's also there. So the community rallied around us to help take care of those needs with donations and things. And also it helps our students at the high school. So not only our student community, but also a lot of our parents who are unable to provide some of those things for our students, they're able to access those as well. We have a college and career fair every year. I laugh about this. We offer our students at Gillespie High School an hour lunch if they attend the college and career fair. It's during our parent-teacher conferences. I referenced Meet the Teacher night before. Our conferences have been very good. And we've had excellent. High school is always tough to get parents in, but we've had a ton of great attendance for the college and career night in conjunction with the Meet the Teacher night, because our students want the hour-long lunch because we have open campus, so they can go off campus and get something to eat with their friends and all of that. But it's been cool, and it's great for me to be able to talk to students, meet parents, who I wouldn't necessarily know either. So that's terrific. During COVID, we worked on a community resource packet. So I reached out to a ton of communities, and I'll reference this later. But ever since I've been in this area, people have told me we have no resources in the area. We have nothing in this area. That's just simply not true, friends. We may not be able to access it, or we may not be aware of it, I should say. And not being aware of something, we can't access it. But the resources are there, and a lot of times they're underutilized. So I worked to take some of that time during COVID when we were on lockdown to get a resource packet together. And I've got counseling agencies and medical and dental and pretty much just a wraparound clothing resources, food resources, the shelters, the food banks, all of that stuff, which is tremendous. Dan Diamond is a colleague at Jersey Community High School in our hometown. They have a learning lab program. So they took this a step further, and I have tremendous admiration for them. This is the high school that my own children are going to go to, and I'm excited that they have this. Each hour of the school day, they have the learning lab, and it's staffed with either one of their social workers, one of their counselors, or they have an assistant in there. And if a student has a need, if they are upset, if they are angry, if they did not get breakfast, if they showed up to school late, if they need a t-shirt, if they need a pair of shoes, you name it, it's a full service. And they call it Learning Lab. It's a more discreet title because they're working on social emotional learning. But if somebody needs something, they'll say, head up to the Learning Lab. It's in room, I forget what room it is, but It's been tremendous for them. They've had a really great student and community response to that as well. Um, Another example of community engagement for me, we've got our parent education program here in Gillespie, which has been second to none, in my opinion, in terms of they do monthly events. So they're bringing resources to our students who are birth to three before they come to pre-K. We're talking about wraparound services provided by your school a few slides ago. This is another tremendous example of that. When I went back to what are we actually providing in school, we're providing parent education for our parents and resources for them so they can get bottles and formula and diapers and pull-ups and I mean food resources. They've got all kinds of stuff and also parenting support. So they've got play groups, they've got monthly events, and they always have a dinner and a dessert. I've tried some of their food. They always do a very nice job. So that's been an excellent example of that's both family and community engagement that bridges between both because it's reaching out to individual families, but for their bigger events, they're bringing the community in, which is tremendous. My own personal take on community engagement, our schools don't exist in isolation. As you can see on the graphic down there, it's the family, the community, and the school all go together and they're equal parts in that partnership. We need them and they need us. I know that sometimes there can be an us versus them kind of feeling. There are always parents, unfortunately, who are contentious. But my statement has always been, I'm here for your child. I'm here for your child. We as a school are here for your child. We may not see eye to eye, but let's find some common ground. And if they believe in us, they'll support us. Um, I both my wife and I were in situations where strikes were being considered. We had a meeting as a staff during a contract negotiation probably 5 years ago, and we were meeting out in the community at a separate location, and I had several teachers who were very vocal about, we're not getting what we deserve. We need to strike. We need to look at this. And I said, I was part-time in another school district in this area when they had struck, and I said the community supported the school in the beginning, and everyone said, I'll put a yard sign out there and all of that. By day two of the strike, people started asking questions in the community, like, why do I still have my child at home and I don't have food for them? Or why is school not in session and things like that? By day three, the community had very much withdrawn its support. And I think that's something that really hurried people back into school because when you lose the support of your community, it got very, very contentious and very, very ugly, for lack of a better term, unfortunately. And I know that for a long time, and we felt the impacts of this in the community. There was a lot of I felt like broken trust, and it was a great strain because I mean, again, if we learned anything from COVID, we rely on routine, and we very much have that routine of school and all that that we're expecting. So thankfully, we as a Gillespie staff did not vote to strike. I was very, very happy about that. We were able to get things worked out on every end, and I hope that people did take that to heart because that would set relationships with our community back very far, and we're blessed with a tremendous community here in Gillespie. To me, some of our biggest barriers to community engagement, time and trust are two of them because a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have the time to invest in a partnership with school and may not have had a great relationship with their school growing up. So the trust isn't there. A lot of time logistics are there after school, the workday, childcare, transportation, whatever. And always, I hear this from people in the various districts. We just don't have the ability to engage the parents who need the most support because when people are struggling and just in survival mode, a lot of times it's extremely difficult to get people engaged. Um, my experience has been that elementary engagement tends to be greater than middle school or high school. I don't know if that's the same everywhere, but I think sometimes parents have the mentality of, well, I've gotten my kid, this far, they're fine now. I always say they need you when they're little. they need you even more, but differently when they get to middle school or high school, because that's a stressful time, and a lot of times we really need a lot more support from parents at that time. Thinking about our school culture, a lot of times we can help mitigate our stress because this is an extremely stressful profession. I don't need to tell any of you watching that because you all know. Managing our stress through our community. Um, we came back in 2022 and we had started social emotional learning, and I recognized coming back we were going to do an activity called Write and Rip, which we do at our summer workshop. It's one of my very favorite activities. Just take out note cards very simply. And on those note cards, you can write down every negative thing that happened in the prior semester, in the prior school year, you name it. And then you tear them up. And I was going to initially give this about 2 to 3 minutes. Um, we ended up taking, I think, 10, and people were still writing furiously. People, filled up multiple note cards and all of that. And I said, please tear them up. And what you do with them, if you choose to move forward, that's your choice. We're leaving the negativity of the past in the past, and we're moving forward. Because positivity spreads, as does negativity. We can't control the attitudes of other people, sadly. There's always going to be some who are going to be crabby. I always say I'm not I'm not responsible for my three crabbiest coworkers to keep them happy, because you know who else can't keep them happy? That's right, everyone else in their lives. Positivity really spreads if we try to make an extra effort to be that positive force. And it doesn't mean you have to be running up and down the halls. It's very simply making eye contact with your coworkers. Good morning, greeting people by name, offering people help if they're struggling, if they're stressed, anything like that. Um, one year we did a drawing, and I did I'll cover your class for 15 minutes. Those were very, very popular. So I was able to, since I don't have a classroom I have to cover, I was able to schedule my students around a few breaks to go and give people, again, just 15 minutes. Go get a cup of coffee, go take a break. One of our teachers went and took a 5 minute walk outside, just clear your head. So it's things like that that can make a big difference. I remember my internship supervisor on the west side of Chicago, Sherry Gibbs was her name, wonderful social worker. And she said in the mornings, she always tried to make a round of the building, say good morning to her teachers. And she said, I've made copies for people. I've gotten people cups of coffee. She said, it's a simple thing to me that takes 3 minutes, but she said it means a ton to somebody else. So it's going out of our way, and it doesn't take a whole lot. And ultimately, it's up to each of us individually how we show up, what we do for our school culture, because again, our community's looking at us, and people know because their kids go here, and they got a pretty good idea of what our vibe can be. And if we've got more positivity than negativity, those people aren't gaining that strong foothold. And some of my coworkers have very pleasantly surprised me. Who's in charge of that day? Who's in charge of that activity? It's been tremendous. Some of our folks have stepped up, and it's been just great. We've had half days for teachers that our administration has put together. It's been great. We've had chair massages. We had an escape room one year, refreshments, volleyball in the gym, just in a half day, in an afternoon. This year we're going to Lake Williamson, which is a Christian camp not far from here, a Christian center, and they have a bunch of outdoor activities. So zip line, ropes course, stuff like that. And to me, I know even as adults, this next statement here, how much do you really care what your coworkers think of you? If you're going to choose to be positive, maybe there's going to be some people who are going to razz you a little bit. But when you're engaged and you're invested in your school climate and your school culture, if it impacts other people's view of you as an individual, the people who are viewing you are either jealous of you or are completely burned out. Because if somebody's going to think negatively of you for trying to bring some positivity to your school environment, those are also incidentally going to be the first people who are going to complain about, pretty much everything, so there's going to be some folks who are trying to spread negativity. If you're going to bring the positive, if we've got more positive people than negative, that's what's going to matter a lot more than what a few coworkers have to say. Was going to ask some questions about community engagement. So as you look at this, give it some thought. I always like when I'm walking away from professional development, if I can come back to my building with one or two ideas of some small stuff I can do, whether to best address those barriers, whether it's, take some time and go through and, call a couple of parents. I love good news phone calls. Good news phone calls have been really successful for me because I call a parent and it's always the parent who, the kid is having a hard time. And if I can call them and say, hey, great day today, great day. Or I'll have the kid talk to them, hey, mom, I'm calling. Why? Because I had a great day today. So that goes a really long way. And I've had some students come back later and say, hey, remember, my mom took me out for an ice cream cone. We almost never do that, or whatever it was. Something, something positive. So to me, that may be more individual, but looking at engaging your community a little bit more. It doesn't have to be a huge event. And think of your successes. Think of you and your team's successes in doing this. And sometimes we don't need to add a whole lot to what we're already doing, but just maybe look at it, tweak it a little bit. Family engagement. Again, we talked before about the school being the foundation of the community. Most of the calls I get start with, hey, Kevin, I didn't know who else to call, so I called you, because people know that we're going to help them, right? They know that they can call the principal or the teacher or the counselor or the school social worker, whoever. That's why I've got this graphic, the homeschool partnership. You got the student in the middle there, me, home on the left and school on the right there, and they're all, if we're all working together, we're all there to support the kid. That's why I like that. They're holding hands with the student in the middle there, and it's an equal partnership, because it's very difficult to do only at home and it's very difficult to do only at school. But if you've got both of those, and I've thought of this more, my children's school has been very engaging in terms of activities. They've got a lot of stuff besides just athletics for our kids to be involved in, whether band, um, and it's really been a positive. And I feel a stronger affinity towards their school than I did towards my own that I went to. My children's school has just been tremendous. We've got a great and devoted staff, and we've been tremendously blessed with that. I feel a tremendous affinity towards our schools here too in Gillespie, and I didn't recognize, I guess, going there and in my early years, but the longer I've done this, the more I've begun to recognize that family engagement and community engagement is tremendous. And as I said, we may be working, behind the scenes on the front lines here in school, but our families and our community are going to remember us. And people know we'll help them. Like I said, when I get a call, I can't tell people, oh, I don't know. Good luck with that. Like, people call us confident that we're going to find them some help, confident that we're going to be able to point them in the right direction. Um, very much so. Um, Again, community engagement, very valuable. We need to focus on family engagement as well, because that relationship, that consistency, and that trust are what all of this is predicated on. Our foundation is a relationship with the family, consistency in terms of that relationship, and trust going back and forth. And that all comes from communication. Honestly, all of those things come from communication, positive communication, and you can put the negative in there too, because if somebody, I've so often heard people say, he or she likes you. If they like you, it means they trust you, right? And that trust for me is what gives me the ability to say to a parent, hey, they had a rough day today. And I'm not going to lie, it was rough. We're going to try it again tomorrow, because we have 185 days in the school here. It's not going to just be one day, and we're going to be working on it. But if the parent feels supported and they feel like we've got that consistent relationship and they trust us, we're going to be able to work together a lot more. And our students are going to have a much, much better outcome from that. Um, our benefits of family engagement, and I've got a quick video that I want to show down here. Um, our students have higher rates of academic success. Ultimately, more students from engaged families, statistics show they go into college and career success. Students are more confident socially and are more stable emotionally. Research shows that, and I can just colloquially tell you, I absolutely see that. Kids who are more engaged from families who are positively engaged and have a positive relationship with the school, I see a lot more social and emotional success from them as well. And ultimately, we talked about climate and culture before. We enjoy our jobs more when families are more engaged and less adversarial. It's extremely stressful when we have a rough time with a parent. I want to show this video here real fast. I really like that video. And one of the most powerful takeaways for me was the best way to help a student is to help their family. I really, really like that. And again, that goes back to trust and the um, what we get, what we get in terms of our relationships with people, that communication. Some great examples of family engagement for me, reaching out to families for both, again, positive and negative situations. I always use the term compliment sandwich. You got to handle it gently. Give a compliment, what they do well, what we need to work on, and then close with a positive because people are only going to hear the negative. And if you can buffer it with a little bit of positive, because every child has strengths, right? I mean, it does not matter. Everybody's got some strengths. And I think it's really, really important that we remember that because we get bogged down because we've got these kids and they can be extremely frustrating. But these kids are coming from tough situations, a lot of them, and they're really just looking for somebody to love them and care about them. Um, so making a phone call, notes home, etc., to keep communication open, kind of the video touched on that. Linking a family to resources, again, best way to help a student is to help their family. And that's literally why my job exists in a lot of respects. That's why we have school social workers, get those resources out there. Students are struggling with hygiene. I always like to sit down with parents. I do not, I don't work in the special ed realm anymore. I'm the gen ed social worker for Gillespie. But when I was still working in the special ed realm, I always like to sit down with parents for just a couple minutes before a meeting and talk with them about the student before we got in there, before we had a bunch of other people in there. I always liked if we could, even if it was just in the office for just a minute, I would sit in the chair next to a parent and just talk to them about how things were going, what their thoughts were, because then we had an opener. And a lot of people come into meetings with us and feel intimidated. And I really felt like that broke the ice in a lot of situations. And I had a lot of luck with that. Our families who have gone through deaths, imprisonment, some kind of stressful event, again, trauma builds on trauma a lot of times. And a lot of our families in crisis, there are more crises. If we can support them, that's going to go a very long way in terms of engaging families and building our trust in that communication. Then whatever kind of individualized support, I went back to Kevin. I didn't know who else to call. That's individualized support. Every time my phone rings, somebody needs something different, and that's okay. That's what we're here for. They know that we're going to help them. When I would sit with parents, I often liked to refer to them as the expert on their child. Um, it's very true, even if they don't realize it or act like it. And a lot of parents that gives them something to work towards because if they aren't the expert on their child or they can't tell me a lot about their child, it's got to make some people think. Our teachers are the true experts because we see the good, the bad, and the ugly every day. Um, Fostering that relationship is tremendously valuable for positive outcome for each child because so frequently we end up with, those kids who, my teacher was the only person I liked, the only person who believed in me, the only person who trusted or who I could trust. The more we engage families, the more they trust you and are willing to work with you because ultimately we're all here for their kids. We're working together. And I talked earlier about our Birth to Three, our Family First program here in Gillespie. Great food equals great attendance. If we're going to be engaging people in individual families in the community, every one of our events has got to have some kind of food or some kind of incentive because it's gonna get people out. And I always enjoy going to community stuff, and it's great to get kids out because we get to see other families and stuff, and it's a really good thing. And some of the barriers, again, we looked at this in terms of community engagement, and a lot of these barriers can be similar. For me, I think a lot of it is that mentality, the us versus them. Unfortunately, a lot of negativity is out there. It's us versus them. It's the school's against us and all of that. But I think if we can foster those relationships, it isn't there. Um, it always makes me chuckle. The folks who know exactly what we do for a living because they went to a school 30 years ago. Well, I used to go to high school, so I know how it is. Okay. If you haven't worked in one, you probably wouldn't know because you went to one. And um, I had a student one time, it was finals at the high school, and student told me, I said, "Man, Mr. McNicholas, you got a great job. You just, you make it look so easy." And I said, "Well, I'm glad you see that. I'm glad you see people walking away from me smiling. You don't see everything that goes in behind the scenes." But I was really happy that young man that I made it look fun for a while. I thought that was very cool, and I appreciated him saying that. Activities can be a tremendous barrier to family engagement because our families are busy. I mean, we've got sports, we've got clubs. A lot of families own or run businesses, whether restaurants or other businesses within the community, which is valuable because that can be a great partnership. At the same time, though, if mom and dad run a restaurant, mom and dad are not going to be able to be here for meet the teacher night more than likely, or be able to parent teacher conferences. So we have to get creative sometimes with the way that we're able to engage families. In terms of stress, I would love to believe that most people are doing the best they can. I know that that isn't true 100% of the time. I'm a realist. But again, someone else's best may not be my best or your best or whatever, and that's okay. If people are at least trying and they feel supported by us, we're going to have a much better outcome. And I will say the people who are doing the best they can, and it doesn't look like it, are probably the people who need us the most. And that's what I've ultimately got there down at the bottom. No, really, they need us. And again, the graphic here, more about the home and school partnership. Again, walking away from this, if you can think of, you've got some barriers. If anything in here has resonated, with you as to how to address those barriers. And also, please celebrate your successes. For me, coming from the social emotional realm of this, focusing on our successes is a really, really, really necessary part of this because we get dealt a lot of problems. We get dealt a lot of problems that we have to solve. That's why we have a team. That's why we have principals and psychs and social workers. We have deans of students. We have assistant principals. We've got our superintendent. We've got this whole team here. And that's not to mention our teachers and our teaching assistants and our Family First program. We've got so many folks here in our buildings who are here ultimately for our students' education. So we're going to come up with some successes. And even if those successes have some tweaks that we can make, it's never going to be perfect, and that's okay. We always keep learning. So ultimately, thinking about families, thinking about community, what is a school for? Our classrooms are places where our confused and hurt kids go to get their emotional needs met because they know their teacher loves them and cares about them. That love is what our kids need to go and do something with their lives. We as a staff experience a lot of trauma, some of us from our own experiences, some of us from the children who also experience it and share it. I had a student come in, a U of I student right now. My wife and I both went to U of I, so I was excited to be able to talk with this young lady. She needed to interview me for a class, and she's from town here, so she came in and interviewed me. Her last question to me, what is the worst part of your job? And I said, experiencing the terrible things that human beings do to each other. We have trauma, our students bring it to us, and we got to make sure we're caring for ourselves. Nobody mentioned that to me during social work school. I don't remember. I remember you got to be about the kids, take care of those kids, take care of those families. Self-care wasn't really a thing 22, 23 years ago when I was starting school. It is very much a thing now. I just heard positive affirmations on the radio this morning. Self-care is a big buzz on social media, and we're doing social emotional learning conferences over the summer now. So we're winning this. The positivity is winning this. The social emotional supports are winning this, but we have miles to go. And if we are not here, we are the most valuable resource. If we're not here, if we're not able to show up for our students because we're not taking care of ourselves, so important. Um, I love this video, and I've got a story that I want to close that slide out with. Um, One of my favorite things in terms of self-care, and I suggest this to everybody, get yourself a digital picture frame. You can watch your life's highlight reel of your vacations, of your families, of your pets, of everything you value. It's hard to not be grateful when you're watching all the best flash through your digital picture frame. They're like 30 or 40 bucks on Amazon. To me, they're well worth it. I don't get a kickback from that. I don't know if anybody from Amazon's listening. I don't get a kickback on that. This is one of my very favorite videos. You may have seen it, but I do want to play it again. I really love that video. That I've used that a number of times when I present it, and I love just the counterpoint between how are we showing up for our students, right? We've bus driver who just shoved little Jordan to the back of the bus, and principal ignored him, and his teacher was cranky, and the lady in the lunchroom was cranky. Versus we're showing up and we've got smiles on our face. We make our kids feel welcome. That's what we're talking about in terms of social, emotional, and academic success. Um, when my daughter was born, I was working at, actually my son and daughter, both of which were born when I was working at an alternative school. And a lot of our students had been expelled. A lot of our students had committed some pretty significant crimes and had been incarcerated for a while. And my wife said to me, your mindset in alternative ed, and I've always kept this, is that this child is somebody's Ellie. Ellie is our oldest daughter. And then this child is somebody's Jeremiah. Jeremiah was born while I was there. But so she said, this kid, as difficult as they are to you, is somebody's baby. Somebody loves them, somebody cares about them somewhere. They may not feel it, but that's going to be significant. So that video really strikes me because we want our students to grow up and have positive outcomes, just like we want our own children to have. And that was a very powerful moment for me when my wife said that to me. And incidentally, she didn't remember saying that when I was prepping these slides. I reminded her of that story. Um, we did the I Wish My Coworkers Knew book as a book club, as a book study here at the elementary school. And so I really like this. How can we reframe our own stress and trauma that we've internalized to help us come together as a team? We're fighting some internal battles, no matter who we are. This matters. So, administrators, how can I come across as more positive and supportive for my staff, for our students and families, for our staff, our teachers, our support staff? How can we frame things for students and parents to help support them in difficult situations? Because a lot of our kids just walking through our door are bringing difficult situations with them. Attitudes are our choice. What we choose allows us to be a leader and a positive force within our school culture. Why are we still here? This isn't an easy profession. We did What's Your Why at one time. I was on a plane coming back from New Jersey about 15 years ago, and I got to talking to this guy. It was a small plane, and I got to talking to this guy who was across the aisle from me. I think we were the only two people awake on the flight. And those of you who know me, it would really surprise you that I would talk to someone who, was on an airplane just randomly. But he was, of all places, he was coming back from Africa. This was the last leg of his flight from New Jersey to St. Louis. Um, and I asked him, what were you doing in Africa? And he said, I'm a maritime security guard. He said, 3 months at a time, I live on an oil rig. And he said, a lot of my job entails shooting at pirates and defending the oil rig from attacks. And he said, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm the school social worker at East Alton Middle School at that time. And he goes, oh man, school social worker, that's a rough job. And I said, you're shooting at pirates for a living, and you're telling me I got a rough job. Oh man, yeah, that's a rough job. Um, that always really struck me because one of those jobs sounds a lot better than the other. I think school social worker sounds a lot safer than maritime security guard out in the middle of the ocean on an oil rig. But that really struck me that guy thought that, social work was such a rough job. We as a staff matter. If we're gone, who takes our place? We've always got that situation of we've got some amazing staff here. If they aren't here, we're in the middle of what I call the great exodus. A lot of people have left this profession. Who takes our place? I'm going to talk about a conference that we did in just a minute. My wife always says you're one difficult parent away from a great year going south very quickly. We got to bounce back from that. And hey, I've thought about leaving before, but looking at all of our successes, I love this tag cloud here, and I want to do this again this year because it's going to show us some tremendous progress. We didn't make the progress in the early years of social emotional learning, but if I did this again, it would show so much more progress, so many more things that we're doing. From simple stuff like our cheer committee. I brought some high schoolers with me, and we went around and delivered candy bars to teachers. We've got QR cards from Woodburn Press. If you guys want to look these up, they've got QR codes on them. Kids can scan them with their phones, and it pops up about a 60-second video about a variety of different topics. alcohol, vaping, dealing with stress, suicidal ideation, everything from that to being successful in class, taking good notes, ACT, SAT. So there's all these different topics on those cards that we were able to buy with the grant. Those have been terrific. I've got the worry box in the high school. Students know they can come up and write their worry and stress down on a card and throw it in the worry box. We've got all kinds of stuff. Our coal mine crazies, that's new. We're the Gillespie Miners. The coal mine crazies are our student cheering section, and they bring a lot of energy to our sporting events and stuff. Um, One thing I love, we're talking about self-care in terms of engagement for us to show up successfully at school. The graphic on the left with the 8 types of self-care. We've got physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, environment, social, and financial. Looking at all of those things, those all go together. It doesn't mean that you have to be perfect at all of those, but grab one of them today. What can you do today? For me, a lot of it is social. I have to look at, I'm not saying yes to everything. I love, putting the message out there. I love doing extra stuff, but sometimes it gets overwhelming, and it's important for me to set those boundaries, those parameters. Environmental, it says clean and safety. I love that because once in a while I'll go and grab the vacuum from the maintenance closet and wheel it down to my office at the end of the day and plug it in. And I'll have my office is in the back of the library at Gillespie High School, and so our once in a while I'll have students kind of poke their head around the corner. You okay, Mr. McNicholas? And I'll just wave and say, doing great, just controlling what I can control. Another thing I love recommending, and I have one of these in both of my offices. I'm here at the elementary school in the morning and then middle school, high school in the afternoon. I have a file, yes, I do, in my office. It says, save to read on a day you feel like everyone hates you. And there are days that we feel like everyone hates us. And in that file, I have got all kinds of stuff. I'll actually show you everything. Looking here real quick. Let's see here. Uncle Bobby sent me a card for my 40th birthday. Aunt Chris and Uncle Bobby, love it. Here's a birthday card from my own children. Um, got a lot of my own kids' drawings. I've got some student stuff. I've got a shirt that says "You good, bruh?" Well, one of my second graders gave me a "You good, bruh." That was a lot of fun. What else do we have here? Lots of stuff for my kids that they made, all kinds of stuff. So I brought some stuff from home. I've got quite a bit of stuff from school here. Kids wrote me notes, colored me pictures and stuff. I save that stuff because to me it's important and it's significant because if someone cared enough about me to create that for me, then I'm going to save it. And when I'm having a rough day, let's bust that out. And there's days at the end of the day, I'll sit down, I'll pull that folder out, and gosh darn it, that was some nice stuff. So I encourage you, if you haven't kept your stuff yet, keep some of it, stick it in a file for yourself, and at the end of a rough day, break that out. It's enjoyable. Um, Places I've worked were not all the same by any means. Kendall County Mental Health, it was Mental Health Disneyland, I call it. We had 13 psychs and 13 social workers my first 2 years, so I just assumed that was what the rest of the world was like. I went to East Alton Middle School, and it was the me show. The contrast between those two reminded me of Laura's 27th birthday, which we spent in Rome. We did not have our children yet. It was PC, pre-children. You see the fish on top of the plate, the whole fish with the eyes and everything. We went to a very romantic restaurant. We were in Italy over Laura's birthday, so we sit down at this very romantic restaurant. Vito, the chef, comes out and he says, my specialty dish, fish pasta. You want to try? Would love it. Thank you, Vito. Whatever you recommend. Vito brings out 2 huge plates of delicious looking pasta with 2 whole fish with eyes staring at us. I thought this was going to be fish diced up in the pasta. It was a very striking contrast between what I was expecting fish pasta to be, the difference between my early experience in social work and my experience after that. Also, a very striking difference. That is why we created Mental Health First Responders Network. 6 years ago, we started with, well, 7 years ago now, excuse me. We started with 3. Chaz Swearingen and Nate Blaza were my 2 co-founders. We now have, I said 432, we're at 440 now. Just added member number 440 today. Very excited. If you want to join us, shoot me an email. Mental health first responders, we offer training just like this. This is going up on our YouTube channel. We offer training all the time, every month. We have a great partnership with Ryan Wamser and Matt Weld at the Regional Office of Education. We offer CPDUs for our trainings and stuff. I do them live on Zoom once a month. This is the third Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. If you can't make that, I record it. I'll send it out. We have a very active email group where people share resources, job postings. So in addition to the professional development on Zoom, we've got a lot of resources. People can ask questions and all of that. So it's been excellent to take all of those. And this was born of that thought for me because, again, going back in East Alton, we would have an occasional meeting with some of the other social workers in the area, but now we've got 432 folks in schools. We partner with Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. We partner with Brightpoint. We partner with our local health department. We have a ton of agencies and resources in our area. CASA, the Court Appointed Special Advocates. I could go on and on, but this for us has really, really, really taken off in amazing directions. And I'm just thrilled to be able to say, this is our partnership with the community. And we have a ton of resources for our families, for our students that we're able to educate our teachers and our professionals in school. We're able to educate our colleagues about, because the people we're serving need us. The people we're serving need more support. So to be able to bring all of this stuff together has been a tremendous, tremendous resource. It's been an amazing blessing. A couple of great resources here, quite a bit about self-care, and then Spider, which is the Illinois.gov database for resources, which is absolutely super helpful as well. We can send these slides out, but again, my email back here just for a minute, and then we'll put this up on YouTube, and Matt will share. Much appreciated to everyone who was able to watch, able to attend. Please, by all means, if there's anything I can do to support anybody, by all means, please let me know. And my pleasure to present this afternoon. Thanks, everybody.